Hey, so in this video, we're going to be talking about nesting loop structures. Okay, so what exactly did we learn previously? Well, previously we learned that we can iterate through things or loop through things multiple times if we want to repeat a certain action. And well, in using one of these loops, for example, a for or a while loop, the body, so let's say we had a for loop, um, that ran, let's say 6 times. So we could just do something like that. Well, after we after we've written this, make sure that we have a tab here or a few spaces here for Python to know what exactly should be run inside of this. And inside of this, for any valid Python statement or program, a valid Python statement is can be used within this for loop. And so we can have, for example, a while loop here. So we might say even while true. We might put another for loop in here, for example, for y in range of 6. And we can do stuff like that. So these are all, plausible, plausible and acceptable body statements within this outer for loop. Now, once again, just like I said, if we have a for loop like this and then another for loop like this, then what this is called nesting. So think about it as putting something inside something, right? So you're nesting the for loops. And so when we refer to the for loops, we would call this one the outer for loop and this one the inner for loop. Or you can just call it the inner loop or the outer loop. Okay, so now that we know a few of the terms, let's actually, and sorry for deleting that, let's actually look at an example of where a for loop or a nested for loop might be useful. So let's say, for example, we wanted to print something out like this. So let's have a star here, 2 stars here, 3 stars here, 4 stars here, and then 5 stars here. So let's say we wanted to print this out. Now, one interesting thing is that if we wanted to print this out, all we would have to do, for example, is simply just print an asterisk like that. And that'll be totally fine. So if I remove all this because this is not valid Python code, if we save this and run the module, let's actually delete all this as well because it's expecting there to be stuff in there. If we run this, we can see that one of the stars gets outputted. Okay, so now we know that this will pretty much print a star for us. Now the question is, how will we be able to print out a star and then 2 stars? Well, let's say on the second line, I wanted to print out a star, and then I wanted to print out another star on the same line. Well, this right here wouldn't actually work the way we wanted it to. And sorry, let me just completely remove this. So we can see that here, it's going to print a star, star, and star. It's going to print them out on new lines. And so the way we're going to combat that is we're actually going to tell Python what we want to do. We don't want to, move our cursor. So you can see this blinking cursor right here is on this current line. So once it prints out a star like this, you can see that my cursor is still on the same line. But what print does is it moves it to the new line like this. And so we don't actually want that. What we want to do instead is have it so that instead of printing out the star and then immediately going to the next line, we want it to stay on the same line like this. So what we can do is we can specify with a comma and then say the ending, I don't want it to be a new line. I want it to be a empty character like this. So if I save this, and we can see here that, let's compare it. So once I print this one, it should print this star and move my cursor to the new line. Then it should print a star, but in this case, see, you can see here that it doesn't move me to the new line. And just to be clear, this can be single quotes or double quotes. So we can even run this again and see that it works perfectly fine. So you can see here, now, after we print this one, so that this one right here corresponds to this one right here, after that, it'll move us to the new line. So you can see how using this technique is really powerful. Okay, so once again, we wanted to print something out like this. So 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, and then 5 stars. Well, let's think about how we might program this. So for each of the rows, we can see that this is the first row, this is the second row, the third row, the fourth row, and the fifth row. And one thing that you should notice is that for each of the rows, or each of the row numbers, the number of stars is equal to the row number, right? So in row number 1, there's 1 star. In row number 2, there's 2 stars. Row 3, there's 3 stars. Row 4, there's 4 stars. And row 5, there's 5 stars. Great. So next what we're going to do is we can see that this is what we want to print out. So I'm actually going to comment these out so that we can actually keep them there for reference. Okay, so let's get started here. So let's say we wanted to, for example, loop through each of the row numbers. Well, we know that row 1 starts at 1. So we're going to say for, let's say, row in range of 1 all the way to 5, right? But wait, what's the issue with using 5 here? Well, if we use 5, it doesn't actually include the 5 there. So what we have to do is 5 plus 1, which is 6. Now for each of the rows, we can see that the number of stars corresponds to the number row that we're on. So row, for example, 1 has, once again, 1 row, row 2 has row 1 has 1 star, row 2 has 2 stars. So what we have to do is we need to print that many stars. So how do we print that many stars? Well, all we have to do is say for, let's say for x, or let's say for each star in range of the row, because if we think about this for loop right here will run how many times the count is on the row. So when row is 1, this is going to loop through once. When row is 2, this is going to happen twice. When this is 3, this is going to happen 3 times. When this is 4, this will happen 4 times. And when this is 5, this will happen 5 times. And so for each of the stars, what I want to do is print them out. So I'm going to say print out a star, but make sure that the ending is blank, like this. Now this will actually be incorrect for now, but let's actually see what happens when we run this. So you can see that none of the stars were printed on a new line. And so how do we, trick the computer to actually print it to a new line, or how do we control it to a new line? Well, let's say after we print all the stars for the certain row, let's just print a new line. And we can just use this print function because this print function will always put my cursor to the next line. So if I run this module, we can see that it works perfectly fine. Okay, so we can see here that it works totally fine. Okay, now the next thing we might want to do is we might actually want to use Turtle in this case to, for example, print this to the screen for us. Well, let's see how we might be able to use Turtle to do that for us. Okay, so with Turtle, what we can do is we can actually start using our Turtle function. So just remember how we coded this up. We're actually going to go to Bob the Awesome Turtle. Let's close this one here. And let's bring this to the top of our screen. All right, and I'll put this right behind here. So with Turtle, once again, all we have to do is say import turtle. Then what we want to do is we want to create a turtle. So let's say our turtle's name was, let's say Jim in this case, right? So Jim, we're going to create this new turtle. So we have to say Jim is equal to turtle.turtle. So what this does is it's going to basically ask this turtle here, and it's going to say, hey, can you create a new turtle for me? Then at the end of each of my turtle programs, what I want to do is I want to say turtle.done to tell it that I'm done with this turtle. Okay, so just remembering how we coded it up. So let's remember. So what we did is we said for each of the rows, and we had how many rows? Well, we had 6 rows, right? But no, we actually had 5 rows. But the issue with using 5 rows is that when we use 5 rows, it'll, like 5 right here, it'll actually only produce 4 rows. So what I want to do is I want to start at 1 and end at 6, right? I want to do whatever I want to end at plus 1. Then I know that the number of stars per row is equal to the row number. So it's equal to this variable row right here. So what I can say is for each star in range of the row number, right? So once again, basically for each iteration of this, so when this changes, this will change that many times, right? So for each of the stars, what I want to do is I want to say, hey, Jimmy, can you write a star to the screen for me? And in the previous video, I didn't show you guys how to do this, but basically we can increase the font size of our turtle, right? Or of our text, sorry. And the way we do that is we say font is equal to, for example, we might write Arial, and we might write the font size right here. Now there's a bunch of other commands. We can bold this, we can underline this, and so on. But for now, let's keep it simple and just say that the font size is equal to 36. Then what I want to do is, so I basically written my star. And let's actually see what happens when I do this, if I run this program right here. You can see that nothing really happened, right? You can see this one star right here, but the issue with that star is that it's a bunch of stars overlapping each other. And the reason for that being is because the cursor never really moves. Bob doesn't move, so we can't really write multiple characters in succession. So what we have to do is we need to tell Bob to move over to the right to write the next star. So what we're going to say is, Bob, can you please lift your pen up and can you move forward some amount? Now, how much do we need to move forward by? Well, if our font size is 36, we kind of can think about the font size as a square on the screen where the font is, or where the characters are limited in. So it's going to be a square of box 36, basically 36 by 36 pixels. And what it's going to do is we're going to limit each of these characters to that box. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over by 36 amount to the right. And what we're going to do is say, Bob, you can finally put your pen down. Okay, so let's run this. And we can see that nothing happened again. And, oh, sorry, this should be Jim because our new turtle is called Jim. So let's run this. And you can see that this is going to happen for quite a while, for exactly this amount. Now, what does this kind of remind you of? Well, for me, this kind of reminds me of that one time when we were trying to write it to the console and we didn't have the new line. So how in the world are we going to actually put this on a new line? Well, let's think about this. So for each time we print out all the stars on one of the rows, we need to go to the next line after that. So we need to go down by 36. Now let's actually try to see what happens if we go down by 36. So before that, we just need to say, Jim, can you put your pen up? And can you go, so basically what happens is the turtle actually initially is facing rightwards. What we want to do is tell it to go face it down and then go downwards. So what we're going to tell it to do is we're going to say bob.right 90 degrees. And what this does is it's going to face him downwards now, because if he's facing to the right and we turn him to the right by 90 degrees, he's going to face downwards. Then we're going to say bob.forward by 36. So go down by 36 pixels. And then what we want to do is we want to tell him to go back to normal. So turn back to the right side. And the way we can do that is we can counter this right by 90 degrees by saying, sorry, these should be Jim again. And I keep confusing Jim and Bob. So we want to say Jim.left 90 degrees, because if he went to the right by 90 degrees, we can turn him back by going left 90 degrees. So if we run this, we can see something interesting is going on. We can see here that although it's putting it on a new line now, it's not all right aligned, right? It's not all starting from this character right here. And so what's the issue with that? Well, what's going to happen is if we run the module again, he's going to come here, he's going to go to the right, and what he's going to do is he's going to come down and face the right again. Go to the right, face down, come down, go to the right, and so on. So instead of that, what we wanted to do is instead of going like that to the new line, we want it to go all the way back now. So how do we tell it to go all the way back? Well, it's very simple. All we have to do is tell it. So after we've done this, we actually want it to go backwards. So right now he's facing down. We want it to face it to the left now. So we can say Jim.right by another 90 degrees to make him face to the left of the screen. And now that he's facing the left of the screen, let's move him back all the way to the initial position. So we're going to say forward by some amount. But how much amount do we need to put him back by? Well, if we just printed row amount of stars, then we need to push him back by row amount of characters as well. So if our font size is 36, we need to multiply that by the number of characters we have, which is the row number. Then what we want to do is he's still facing leftwards. So if I run this actually, we'll see what happens. We can see that it's like some really weird pattern going on here. So what we actually want him to do is we want him to face to the right again. So we're going to have to say, Jim, you can go left or right, it doesn't really matter, by 180 degrees. So instead of facing to the left of the screen, face to the right of the screen. So if we run this module now, we can see that it works perfectly fine and the way we intended it to. So here's the code on the screen. And so in this video, you learned about nested loop structures, how to write multiple lines and multiple characters on the screen using Turtle, and nested for loops.